Hi everyone, welcome to our online hangout space, #ChatUp, Real Talk, Real Impact, brought to you by Quarantalk Media and supported by the United States Embassy in the Philippines. I'm your host, Jermaine Halandoni de Runia, and as usual here on ChatUp, we bring you conversations on social issues and various advocacies. So please join our chat, keep your messages and questions coming, and share this live stream using our official hashtags #ChatUp, and #Real Talk, Real Impact. Now let's dive into today's discussion and find out what's up. This month of June, Pride Month is celebrated across the world, an opportunity to raise awareness on the rights of the LGBTQIA+ and show support and solidarity with the LGBTQIA+ communities. In this episode, Chat Up will hold the space for the stories and lived experiences of the LGBTQIA community members and allies and shedding light on the current issues and opportunities for solidarity and systemic reforms in society. So tune in and keep your comments and questions coming to join the conversation. All right, and let's now call in our guest. Our first guest is a human rights activist and development practitioner who worked with several non-profit organizations and diplomatic missions for various engagements ranging from human security to gender equality. They are currently affiliated with Spark, a Philippine-based organization that advances the mainstreaming of gender and development programs and champions women's economic empowerment and political participation through intersectionality. A board member of Mindanao Pride, a group that advocates the rights and welfare of the LGBTQ plus community in the Southern Philippines. We have with us Hans Mandangit.
Happy Pride, Maine. Thank you very
Happy.
much for having
Thanks.
me.
Thanks, Hans. Thank you for being here. Happy Pride.
Yeah.
And And next, we have an ordained and licensed clergy of the Metropolitan Community Churches, or MCC, which is the first church denomination that accepted and ministered the LGBTQ plus persons and communities. As a queer religious leader, he pastors and leads his local church in worship services, pastoral counseling, outreach programs, and other ministries and advocacies. He also officiated weddings or holy unions for LGBTQ plus couples and speaks in various universities regarding sexuality and progressive Christian spirituality. And prior to becoming a pastor of MCC, he worked for 7 years in the financial markets industry. Joining us tonight is the pastor of the local church of the Open Table MCC in Mandaluyong City, Philippines, Reverend Joseph San Jose.
Hi! Makulay na gabi sa ating lahat. Happy Pride!
Happy Pride po, makulay na gabi po sa ating lahat. And completing our guest for today is someone who has been working towards justice for the LGBTQIA plus persons in the Philippines for over a decade. Their expertise revolves around communications, campaigns, human rights education, advocacy, and research. They also help provide technical consultancy for SOGI SC protection policies at the national and local level. They believe that justice is love in action. At the heart of this is the need to dismantle oppressive systems that continue to subjugate LGBTQIA plus persons and in their place build systems that ensure full and dignified lives for all. Our guest is a member of the steering committee of the ASEAN SOGI Caucus as one of the overall co-coordinators of Metro Manila Pride and as a deputy director of Rainbow Rights Philippines. Let us all welcome Nicky Castillo.
Hi, magandang gabi, Min, Hans, tsaka Reverend Joseph. Salamat for
Magandang
having us.
magandang gabi, Nicky, and welcome to the show, everyone. Thank you for joining us, gaya na sinabi ko kanina. And of course, Happy Pride Month. Happy Pride
Yes.
Month sa inyo pong lahat at sa ating pong mga manonood. Thank you so much for joining us. Maraming salamat sa pagsama nyo. Alam ko po maraming activities ngayong Pride Month, no? But you gave your time to us po, no, para pag-usapan itong napakahalagang issue natin ngayong gabi. So, okay na, simulan na po natin yung ating usapan, no? Medyo mahaba-haba ito at very excited. Kailangan marinig ng ating mga manonood. So, simulan ko po with this question. When we talk about LGBTQ plus rights, we are also basically talking about human rights. Tama po, no? And all of you po have been staunch advocates for several years or almost a decade. How would you describe our progress here in the Philippines in terms of openness, yung pagiging bukas, acceptance, and acknowledgement of the LGBTQIA plus rights in our society? I'll start with Reverend Joseph.
Well, magkakaiba no in terms of the regions. No, that's one consideration to take. Yung level of visibility, representation, and growing, I don't know if you call it acceptance or tolerance, mas prevalent, of course, in Metro Manila, in urban places, but cannot be said the same in terms of the rural areas. No? In terms of human rights, of course, wala pa tayong mga batas. Wala pang mga there is absolutely no national laws that specifically na nagpo-protect sa LGBT at nagre-recognize ng relationships ng LGBT or yung protection in terms of work, public health, etc. Although meron yung anong tag doon? Anti bastos law, something like that, pero parang incidental lang yung ano nun eh. Parang incidental lang yung pagkasama ng LGBT, pero wala pa talaga tayong protection for LGBT. But from experience, in terms of yung sinasabi kong acceptance or tolerance, when I was in college, 15 years ago, 20 years ago, you don't see pride back. I didn't even know that there were pride marches back then when I was in college. No? You wouldn't see also people back then, gay couples, lesbian couples, holding hands in public spaces. But today, I see them. Even kahit hindi Pride Month, no? Sa LRT, sa MRT, every now and then I see couples who express their love regardless kung may titingin sa kanila or what. So, I think there is progress in terms of visibility, representation, paglaki ng Pride March, having more Pride Marches now than during 15, 20 years ago. But again, we still don't have any protection.
Right. Opo, wala pa rin batas, no? Na dapat nasisimulan na sana ngayon, no? At nung matagal ng panahon. Reverend Joseph, may maganda ka pong point that you mentioned. I wanted to ask this a while ago kanina, but then you open it up po, no? Yung, what's the difference between tolerance and acceptance? Open po for all of our guests to answer that before we sagutin nila yung nauna kong tanong. Reverend Joseph, maaari niyo po simulan po muna.
Tolerance kasi is okay, parang okay ka to a certain degree as long as you do not affect, you do not bring discomfort to the feelings, mindsets of other people. Parang gano'n, no? Ganun, at least in layman's pag tolerance is that sige, okay naman ba yung common na naririnig nating mga even among LGBT na okay naman maging bakla eh. Huwag na kayong mag-ingay. Okay naman maging bakla, huwag ka lang magdamit babae. 'Di ba? Okay lang naman yung LGBT. Bakit pa kayo hihingi ng kasal? 'Di ba? May isang gay icon na or unknown gay personality sabi, wag na natin igiit yung mga kung ano ng mga karapatan ng LGBT, mga baklang hamburger lang tayo. Yung sabi niya, 'di ba? So, yun yung tolerance, no? Binibigyan ka ng certain degree of to exist.
Right.
But you cannot insist on equal rights. You cannot expect the same level of respect and dignity and protection. So, pag acceptance, lahat yon, walang tapon.
Opo.
No? You are accepted, you are recognized, you are protected similar to everybody else.
Right. Opo. Salamat po, Reverend Joseph. In next yung question kay Nicky, siguro itali na rin natin yung tanong kong acceptance and tolerance doon sa question ko earlier, which is yung progress natin here in the Philippines in terms of how the LGBTQIA plus community are accepted and yung openness ng society. Nicky?
I actually definitely agree yung mga sinabi ni Reverend Joseph earlier regarding the difference between acceptance and tolerance. Tolerance is very conditional. I will let you into this space to do these things for as long as you abide by these certain rules that I have for you. That's only up until that point. Pagdating sa acceptance, yun na nga, unconditional na siya. But I think there's also a further step for this kasi iba rin yung acceptance tsaka tolerance, it's very passive. We would really like to see for people to actually advocate and actively be allies. Hindi lang yung tatanggapin kita, pero yung ipaglalaban talaga kita. Na makuha mo tong mga karapatan at hustisya na dapat na nasa sayo naman from the beginning. At saka ipaglalaban ko rin na yung mga espasyo kung saan available to me as a person who is not a marginalized, belongs to a marginalized sector like yours, can avail of these spaces that are accessible to me kasi nga hindi ako marginalized person. So feeling ko, ultimately, that's where we want to get. For society to actively advocate, to be active allies, to be active accomplices for the LGBTQIA plus community and other marginalized sectors. In terms of progress, pagdating kasi sa mga movements, it's a long game, no? We're never gonna see the changes overnight. I think that's baka sa pelikula lang nangyayari yun na ganun siya ka-short. But I think it's important for us as advocates to look at it from where it started. Because definitely if you compare where we were as, a marginalized group in the 90s when the first spurts of activism around LGBTQIA+ rights started, napakalaki na ng progress to this day. Mahirap siyang makita, especially if you've only been in activism for maybe like a few years, no? Kasi kaya rin I think doon nanggagaling yung burnout ng maraming mga activists na parang kasi hindi naman nangyayari, wala namang pagbabago na nangyayari. But if you take into perspective yung itong pinaglalaban natin ngayon, itong kung nasan tayo ngayon ay hindi nag-umpisa kung kailan tayo nag-umpisa. Kung di nag-umpisa to nung 90s pa, at even before that, those that weren't documented, the mga small struggles of LGBTQIA plus persons, malaking-malaki na yung pagbabago. Pero syempre, hindi pa rin tayo tapos. Malaki pa at mahaba pa yung landas na tatahakin natin para makuha natin yung kinabukasan kung saan mapagpalaya ang maging LGBT, mapagpalaya yung pagmamahal natin, mapagpalaya yung buhay na nakakamit ng mga LGBTQ+ persons na wala nang diskriminasyon, wala nang dahas, wala nang prejudice against us. At ang Pride March, which is, a core element of LGBTQIA+ advocacy at movement, ay gaganapin pa rin, pero baka more as parang in memory of our the struggles that we've had and in celebration of the victories that we now have. So that's I think a really parang yung isa sa mga goals natin that we're marching towards. I think it's a long way off, but importante lang din tulad ng tinuro ng mga nauna sa ating mga aktivista na magpatuloy lang hanggang sa makarating tayo doon.
Thank you, Nicky. Mahaba pa yung laban. Makakarating din natin yung ideal state if we continue using this kinds of platform, no? At mahanap pa ng maraming allies. So, ko kay Hans, ano yung nakita mo ng progress in terms of openness and acceptance?
Thank you. Grabe. First two speakers pa lang, parang ang dami na nating na-absorb na information about nasa na ba tayo ngayon sa LGBTQ+ rights sa Pilipinas. Balikan ko lang yung difference nga ng acceptance and tolerance. Siguro para mas madaling maintindihan ng tao, yung Filipino siguro ng tolerance pwede natin ikabit sa pagtitimpi. Diba? Tinitiis ka lang as long as you can conform to the ascribed expectations of society sa isang tao. And then acceptance, kasi sa development field kasi, nire-relay namin yung term acceptance kapag meron ng institutional recognition. So, hindi kaya natin sinasabi na hindi accepted ang LGBTQ plus community dito sa Pilipinas kasi wala pa namang batas na nagre-recognize sa karapatan ng um, people who identify as members of the LGBTQ plus or people who defy the who defy the heteronormative roles and expectations. So, nabanggit ni Pastor kanina yung Bawal Bastos Law, Republic Act 11313. That's the Safe Spaces Act. Napakagandang batas noon for me kasi meron na dong provision yung bawal nang magkaroon ng bawal nang magsabi ng transphobic and homophobic remarks. So that's a kind of a step. That's a step forward para magbigay ng acknowledgement na hindi tama yung ganung mga slurs or insensitive remarks towards another person because they're trans or they're homosexuals. Isa din sa siguro na may bibigyan natin ng emphasis in terms of progress yung Republic Act 11166 of 2018, yun yung strengthened HIV law. If I'm not mistaken, nirecognize siya as a landmark law sa Pilipinas kasi first time magkaroon ng section doon defining gender identity, gender expression, and sexual orientation. So meron tayong nagawa. Hindi lamang yung nagkaroon tayo ng nag-start yung Pride March sa Pilipinas early 1990s up until now. Maganda yon. Pero hindi natin pwedeng i-magnify na or accepted na yung mga yung people who do not conform to the heterosexual expectations kasi hindi tayo nare-recognize ng batas na maging malaya na malaya sa diskriminasyon, sa stigma, sa prejudices. So, doon tayo magbabank on kung titingnan natin yung hanggang nasaan na ba tayo, kung yung batas mismo sa atin, sa Pilipinas, ay silent. Blinded siya na dalawa lamang ang sex assigned at birth, di ba? Dalawa lamang ang gender identity. Pero sa totoo lamang, hindi. Kasi pinanganak tayo ng malaya dapat, di ba? Hindi dapat ang doktora magsabi kung ano ang sex assigned at kung ano ang sex identity ko o a gender identity ko. Kundi tayo dapat. So, nakakalungkot pa rin na until now, pinagdedebatihan pa rin siya. Kahit na marami ng research, marami ng mga studies about ano ba yung impact ng pagbibigay ng karapatan sa isang bata na lumalaki na meron siyang capacity to choose kung ano yung identity niya.
Salamat, Hans.
Sorry,
Thank you.
i-add ko lang.
Go ahead po.
It's low. In comparison, natin parang recently na ang dami nagtataka na, parang yung mga similar situations natin when it comes to, for example, dominant religion. In South America, may mga marriage equality laws na sila. Pero tayo, na din tayo, may yung dominant religion din sa Pilipinas ay the same sa South America. Even in, kung saan galing ang sa Europa, hindi pa rin natin nare-recognize yung karapatan ng mga miyembro ng LGBTQ plus community na magpakasal or magkaroon ng recognition na magsama. So, ang laking irony nun. Well, of course, mahabang diskusyon yun kasi maraming interferences. So, I think yun yung pwede nating ma-point out talaga na progress and slow progress. Thank you.
Thank you, Hans. Sabi nga ni Hans, kakasimula pala na ating programa, there's been a lot of discussions na pag-uusapan natin. Ang dami nang lumalabas na issue. Actually, what you mentioned, Hans, kanina, na pagbata ka pa lang, pagkapanganak, babae ka, lalaki, hanggang doon lang. Even yung mga kabataan, napapansin natin, bawal ka maglaro ng Barbie kung lalaki ka. Bawal ka maglaro ng ganito kasi lalaki ka. It's been a condition ng ating society. And nakakatawa, like what you mentioned, hindi kasi pa tayo institutionally recognized. Yung gobyerno at pamahalaan natin hindi na-recognize yung ating mga karapatan. So, with that, itatali ko yung ating ikalawang katanungan. Ano kaya yung mga nakikita pa natin na challenge that the community still face up to this day? Alam natin na sobrang dami. But ano yung pinaka-urgent ones that you believe should be addressed and could be addressed? I'll start with Nicky naman.
Ako, dalawa lang din naman. Pero dalawang malaki silang bagay. It's really just the SOGSC-based discrimination and the violence. I believe, uh, which will tie into all of the other issues. Kasi ito din yung dalawang bagay talaga from which a lot of the other problems spring out from. And di ba tanong yung caveat mo dun sa tanong mo that could be addressed. I definitely think this can be addressed. These can be addressed. The law, like on passing the SOGI specific anti-discrimination bill, it has been waiting to be passed for 22 years, diba? There's no lack of parang support for it, at least from the community. 22 years siyang paulit-ulit na rini-refile sa Kongreso at sa Senado. So, kayang-kaya siyang ma-address. Kailangan lang siyang maipasa. There's no lack of any data. Hindi lang siguro siya big data na that is backed up by big, money. Pero there's a lot of community, documented incidents of discrimination, that it does indeed happen regardless of where you are in the Philippines. It's just not as documented because, like Hans mentioned, there are no infrastructures, there's no systems for us to be able to document this. Punta ka sa police, sasabihin mo, diniskrimina ka. Tapos sasabihin nila sa'yo, diniskrimina ka kasi bakla ka, kasalanan mo kasi. Ganun. So, and even if they do document these kinds of incidents, these kinds of discrimination, it is not indicated there na diniscriminate siya because sa pagiging tomboy niya, sa pagiging trans niya. So that's never captured. So parang nagiging chicken and egg siya. Naaalala ko rin kasi sa mga unang pag-participate namin sa mga hearings for the national law. Ang laging tinatanong, lalo na nung umpisa, may datos ba kayo na nangyayari to? Na kini-question kung nangyayari ba talaga. Pero paano namin ibibigay yung datos kung hindi nyo bibigay yung infrastruktura na ma-document ito? At kung hindi kayo maniniwala sa mga community-gathered information and anecdotes na nangyayari ito, diba? Which are all valid pieces of information, of data. So yun, kaya siyang ipasa. It definitely can be addressed. Kailangan lang makinig ng mga people who are opposing it, not just in the legislature, but also in other sectors of society, na kailangan siya maipasa dahil sa hindi pagpasa nito for the last 22 years, ang daming nawawala ng dignidad sa buhay ng mga LGBT. Nawawalan ng trabaho, nakikikat sa bahay, nawawalan ng opportunities for education, housing, healthcare, and so many other things that are readily enjoyed by other people because they are not discriminated against on the basis of their SOGSC. So, ang laki-laki niyang factor sa, yun nga, na mention natin, sa mapagpalayang buhay para sa mga LGBT. And again, inuulit ko lang din siya ng maraming aktivista in the last 22 years. It can be addressed. They just need to pass it. In terms of violence naman, I think the anti-discrimination bill, because there are provisions here about affirmative actions and programs on changing, on cultural change, having these kinds of educations on SOGSC and the issues of the community in different sectors. Ang laking factor kasi ng cultural change in addressing the discrimination and violence. I agree with Hans na sobrang importante ng legislative change. Something I learned also through Galang Philippines, which is another organization that works on urban LGBT communities, is that importante yung sinasabi nilang bibingka method, kung saan may pagluto sa taas tsaka sa ilalim. So legislative change sa taas tsaka cultural change sa ilalim, at dapat sabay itong umaandar. Kasi kahit maipasa mo yung batas, ang dami nating magandang batas. Pero kung hindi siya nasusundan ng pagbabago sa kultura, walang nangyayari. Hindi rin siya na-implement ng maayos at hindi nararamdaman ng komunidad yung pagbabago na nandun sa magaganda nating mga batas. So, yun yung dalawang, I think those are the two big challenges that can be addressed. They just need to be addressed. It's there, ripe for the picking, to be addressed by our legislators. Kailangan lang nilang makinig sana sa lived experiences ng mga nasa komunidad.
Thanks for that, Nicky. It can be and should be addressed, no? How about Hans?
Grabe, parang nasabi na lahat ni Nicky, no? Sige, pero bank on na lang ako dun sa SOG Equality Bill. Actually, I can pinpoint two challenges right now. First, again, yung sa SOGI Equality Bill, very important na maipasa nga yung isang batas na magbibigay talaga ng protection sa hindi lamang nga sa kasi ito yung challenge na parang SOGI Equality Bill is equal to LGBTQ plus protection. Hindi po ha. Dahil even cisgender heterosexual ay nagmamanifest at nagpe-perform ng SOGI SE o sexual orientation, gender identity expression, and even sex characteristics, of course. Yung titingnan natin ditong challenge kasi is right now, yung policy makers mismo at yung mga duty bearers ay gender insensitive. Diba? So kahit ipasa natin yung SOGI Quality Bill, pero yung implementation and yung pagiging aggressive when it comes to learning sessions, gender sensitivity trainings, kahit ang GST ay requirement base sa 9710 or Magna Carta of Women sa lahat ng empleyado ng gobyerno na mag-undergo ng GST annually, hindi pa rin siya nagmamarka. Yun yung nakakalungkot. So, I think hindi na lang dapat yung GST ay parte ng isang requirement sa isang organisasyon, lalo na sa gobyerno. But we need to incorporate this kasi talaga sa edukasyon eh. Kasi hindi pwedeng magkaroon lang ng, yun nga, tama yung bibingka method eh. Sumasabay ka dapat, hindi yung pagkapasa mo ng batas, may kita mo na, uy, may change na, di ba? Behavior yan, mindset yan, generations yan, tatanggalin mo, i-relearn mo, i-unlearn mo. So, mahihirapan tayo kung naghihintay tayo sa isang batas. Pero kailangan aggressive. At I totally agree with Nicky kanina, active advocates ka dapat. Hindi dapat yung parang sasabihin lang natin na, we identify the problem, but you should be responsive as well. So, doon natin nakikita yung challenge nito na baka mamaya magkaroon nga ng batas, pero poorly implemented pa rin. Even sa Safe Spaces Act, doon sa nabanggit din kanina ni Pastor, maraming mga nagre-report na sabi, yun nga, wait lang, homophobic yan na. Pero hindi siya tumutuloy sa police station, hindi siya tumutuloy sa mga adjunct na officers na pwedeng mag-help sa mga victims. Kasi hindi din nila naiintindihan eh. Ano ba yung transphobic? Ano ba yung homophobic? Diba? Ano ba yung misogynistic? Ano ba yung sexist? So ganung proseso pa lang, sana na-address na siya ng IRR, ng Implementing Rules and Regulations. So yun yung first. Yung second kong nakikita na challenge talaga is yung homogenization of experiences. Ang laki-laki ng community, LGBTQ plus community, kaya nga nag-plus pa tayo eh, kasi hindi natin siya ma-encompass ng madalian. So I think it's really a big and challenging process for not just for the members of the LGBTQ plus community, but for the whole society na maintindihan na hindi po kami hinulma sa isang hulmahan. May iba't iba po kaming issues. Nagkataon lamang na we defy the norms. We defy the heterosexist and heteronormative institutions, constructions, and norms. Pero hindi mo kami pwedeng tingnan na homogeneous. So sana mag-start doon tayo, like I think pride movements, yun yung lagi nating karga-karga eh. Na pag sinabi nating trans issues, yes, LGBTQ plus issues yun, pero mas sila doubly, triply marginalized yan. Hindi katulad ng mga homosexual na masculine expressing. Kasi sila, nagko-conform sila sa masculinity na hindi sila nabibigyan ng stigma, hindi sila nadi-discriminate. So, I think yung homogenization, importante talagang mabigyan yon ng emphasis na when we talk about LGBTQ+ community, we're not talking about a single community. We're talking about a community that is comprised of different social identities, not only gender, but also race, ethnicity, age, diba, abilities, socioeconomic status. Yun. Thank you.
Thank you, Hans. So may intersectionality sa lahat ng issues na to. Hindi lang siya iisang single community na dapat bigyang pansin ng lipunan, especially ng ating pamahalaan. No? Reverend Joseph, ano pong masasabi natin dito? Ano yung mga dapat pang i-address at could be addressed na issues na kinakaharap ng LGBTQIA community?
Marami na nabanggit si Hans kasi
Ano pong dagdag mo natin?
Ang dagdag ko lang siguro, just to reaffirm na hindi hindi porket may batas, titigil na ang pagpatay sa LGBT o pag-discriminate. So, totoo yun, tama yun. It's a cultural mindset change also, no? And that's what we are seeing now in the US, diba? With the overturning of the Roe versus Wade ba? The Roe law,
Roe
no?
versus Wade pa.
So even if you have a law, that doesn't mean to say that the society is already totally for women's rights, for LGBT rights, for racial rights, no? And nagkakaroon ng backward movement. Gusto ko rin susugan yung intersectionality in terms of challenge yung regions, yung provinces or yung other LGBTs that you do not normally hear about or see represented, no? Halimbawa, mga katutubong LGBT, lumad na LGBT, magsasakang anak ng magsasaka o magsasakang LGBT, no? So we know that they exist, they are there. I've met a few of them nung nasa Mindanao ako. And iba din talaga yung struggle nun, yung pagiging LGBT at yung struggle nila as indigenous peoples. So, ito nga kausap ko nga nung sa Metro Manila Pride, nakita kami ni Professor Andoy at nag-iikot siya for research, no, sa kanyang research. At sabi niya, ang mga nakausap niya sa Mindanao, I can't remember which specific area, pero sabi niya, ang sinabi daw sa kanila, mas prevalent ang hate crime doon at mas ramdam ng LGBT community doon. So, ang naririnig niya is baka kailangan din ng hate crime law, no? Specifically, dahil baka yun daw ang mas, hindi naman yun ang mas, pero yun kasi yung nararanasan nila. So baka kailangan i-include yun sa conversation, sa pagka-campaign, sa paglalabi ng mga batas, no? To include that. Of course, the elephant in the room is religion. The predominance of Christianity, particularly Roman Catholicism sa Pilipinas. Although ang mas maingay naman sa Pilipinas in terms of LGBT rights are the Protestant born again segment, no? So they are the challenge, they are the opposition, they are the big opposition to this. And ang palagi kong sinasabi, ini-insist din sa movement is that we have to also be able to respond to them. Well, not really respond to them, but antag dito, kaya nating dito, banggain when necessary, kaya nating respond in a way na hindi mo basta ini-invalidate na backward kasi religion, kasi we have to be able to intellectually and logically address religious sentiments and religious beliefs. And I think it was in 2019 for the first time, religious people from a theological school was invited sa Senate, no, to speak for the SOGI Equality Bill, no. And that was good. That I welcome that. Hindi ako nakasama doon kasi nasa US ako at that time eh. So I think the other challenge within the LGBT community is or the network is to also be equipped in how to respond, how to deal with religious people, especially the conservative ones. And how do you articulate progressive religious perspectives? Because religion is also a spectrum. Hindi rin siya monolithic, hindi rin siya iisa lang. There is liberal, there is progressive, there is middle, and there is the extreme left, extreme right religion. So how do we in the progressive, liberal, or even the middle religion, how do we advocate and respond to conservative religion?
Thank you po, Reverend Joseph. May nais po bang magdagdag po before we move forward to our next question? Go ahead, Nikki. Parang may gusto ka na sabihin. Okay. Let's move forward to our next question. Thank you for that, Reverend Joseph. You mentioned kanina sa ating mga nandito yung ating panelists, we have a lot of problems, gaps, and issues na nakikita. We have a very powerful tool in our midst, no, which is social media in general, but specifically social media. How do you think these platforms could be better maximized to further forward the discourse on gender equality? You mentioned about education, relearning yung mga culture and traditions na pinasa pa sa atin. Do you think that social media could be a tool to relearn that and to forward the discourse on gender equality? I'll start with Hans.
Yeah, definitely. Pero ito ang caveat. We need to request for the support of the social media companies, of the tech companies. Kasi disinformation, super, propagated niya. Especially ngayong Pride Month, na parang, questioning everything, like questioning the essence of Pride Month or even Pride Parade, Pride March, Pride Protest, ganon. So, I think important yung support and assistance of the tech companies to do that kind of aggressive learning, the creation and wide distribution of online contents, especially in teaching, like engaging the people in discourses like the LGBTQ plus community's experiences. So it can really help. For example, I did this a small study on Twitter Spaces, and very particular yung Twitter Spaces when it comes to having a democratic engagement. And I like it because naging output siya ng mga LGBTQ plus individuals to be heard. Diba? Hindi lang, it's not just distribution of passive materials like, PubMats, but also the distribution of voices through these kinds of engagements online. I think really yun yung first kasi talaga eh. And then siguro yung second natin na dapat talagang I hope tech companies can look into it is talagang yung sila mismo nagpo-provide ng support. For example, like for mental health issues, sana meron din silang way to get the harvest reports of discrimination or harvest reports of mental health problems, and then that's kind of kasi it's all over the place TikTok, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. You can easily reach to a lot of different people, and apparently hindi siya na ma-maximize yung tool na yun, especially sa LGBTQ plus community.
All right, thank you, Hans. Reverend Joseph?
Well, tulad ni Hans, no, at the forefront of it, or at the surface level, of course, you use social media as maximize it as we can for education, for campaigns and all that. But the problem that's happening is several things. Yan nga, disinformation, that's one. And also the so-called bubble. Yung algorithm nga kasi ng mga social media suddenly nagiging parang echo chamber. Parang so we attract only those that are within the same fold. So na-educate din natin those people who are similarly thinking, pero how do we expand that when the algorithm makes you into like
an echo chamber,
into that echo chamber, into that bubble, and then it gives you a false sense of madami tayo. Malaki yung ating movement. And then we realize later on, hindi pala. Diba? And we're not reaching the people that we are supposed to reach. And yun din, at the same time, kung bubble yun sa atin, echo chamber yun sa atin, and then it is also an echo chamber for conservative, extremist, and other groups
Mm-mm.
who are similarly thinking.
Mm-mm.
So I don't know, it's again, we use social media as best as we can, but there is a wall because of that algorithm. How do we really expand their
Go
reach?
past that. Opo.
So yun ang challenge of social media.
Thank you po, Reverend. No? Napakagandang tool, and yet may mga humahagka rin, may mga kulang, may mga walls nga, like literally a wall, no? Na pumipigil pa rin how to expand our reach and forwarding our cause, no? How about Nicky?
I think si Hans tsaka si Reverend brought up like some of the most important issues around using social media. I definitely agree that it's something that we should utilize, but I also agree with them that medyo gargantuan yung kalaban natin in terms of the parang factories of disinformation. Not just disinformation, it's mis and malinformation talaga that's being produced, not just around LGBTQIA plus issues, but generally the human rights around human rights as well. Na naapektuhan syempre yung mga marginalized sectors katulad natin. Sobrang laki ng resources ng mga anti-human rights in general, which spills over to LGBTQIA plus rights, kasi most of those who are loud when it comes to anti-human rights things seem to also be conservative, right-wing, etc. That's, I think, another issue around this also, which is why I agree with Hans regarding engaging the actual platforms, the actual companies themselves that run these platforms, is that there have been studies that actually these platforms, they thrive on Discord. So, kung makikita natin, di ba, sobrang yung nagva-viral na mga bagay ay yung mga bagay na pagbabarda, yung pag-aaway, yung mga very, very, very harmful. And it's not just negative, it's actually active harm na language and discussions. At ito talaga yung, it makes the rounds. This is what goes like to the top of your For You page or whatever in these platforms. And there's an issue with that. And that in itself is something that the platforms need to address. Kasi tayo, as users, we can only do so much. We can, all of us here, we can produce all of the great content that we can, even if we pour in all of our resources, which are finite because we are not big corporations. Even if we gather our biggest brains in the community and gather all of the biggest, influencers or celebrities that we can. If these platforms themselves continue to allow Discord and these right-wing views to thrive and get pushed up to the top of our timelines, then matatalo talaga tayo. So, even here, tama na kailangan sabay yung pag-andar talaga. Siyempre, hindi tayo titigil sa paggawa ng trabaho natin as organizations, as individuals, in spreading, the right, the correct information, the just information. Pero kailangan din may pagbabago on the side of the corporations that own these platforms to make sure na they're on the side of the truth. They're on the side of justice, and not just on the side of what will make people flock to their platforms more, regardless of whether or not it's dangerous or harmful.
Thank you for that, Nicky. Nasa tamang side sila dapat, hindi na kung saan sila. Unfortunately, doon sila kasi kikita ng pera. They need to be on the side of the truth, yon. And speaking of kikita ng pera, alam na natin to, and every time mag-June na, marami tayong nakita sa Twitter, magpapalitan naman sila ng profile picture ang mga kumpanya. We're going to talk about the commercialization of Pride. We have seen a lot of companies nga changing their logos to Pride colors, magpapapintura sila ng rainbow flag. But how do we go beyond these symbolic actions? How can we make sure kaya that companies, nabanggit na nga natin yung mga tech companies and groups, how can they sustain or institutionalize their commitment for equality and inclusion? Parang natawa sila dun sa sinabi ko kanina, nagpapalit sila ng logo. But it's true, right? They do that. A lot of companies do that. I'll start with Reverend Joseph.
May karanasan ako dyan, kaya ako natatawa kasi.
Go ahead po.
Of course, hindi ko papangalanan yung company, no? It's malaking company to, and they invited me to talk about pride, about Soji, ganyan. But my first question, and of course I did a research on them. Ano ba, may policy na ba sila o na-involve ba sila sa anti-LGBT and yeah, they had a history of that. But I still agreed to have an orientation with them, mag-usap kami about the talk, ganyan. And of course, my first question is, do you already have moves within your company for certain policies or certain programs to advance the discourse, yung pag-uusap about LGBT? Kasi pwede namang as of the moment, wala sila eh. Pero nagkakaroon sila ng initiative to do that. But sa course na aming pag-uusap, yun nga, ang gusto lang nila, ang na-feel ko, na-sense ko is that they just want to, because it's Pride, so let's have something for Pride, and that's it. Wala silang balak na to advance anything within their company. No? At yung kausap ko pa was LGBT. No, two of them, tatlo silang kausap ko eh. Yung dalawa doon LGBT pa, and they were like, it came to a point na slightly uncomfortable na sila sa mga tanong ko at sa mga chika ko, no? Kasi nga ang ini-insist nila, gusto lang namin na magkaroon ng parang talk, awareness, uplift the LGBT within our company. And okay, uplift, will you be willing to do a anti-discrimination policy in your HR or demand that from your HR? So, of course, hindi nila ako kinuha. hindi ako nakuha ang speaker nila. No? And yan, nakakapikon sa akin, personally, pikon ako sa mga companies who nakikipride and wala namang, walang hinuha to change even from within their company and to advance rights and dignity of their employees na LGBT. Wag i-patronize, no? And LGBTs should be more mag-research, no? Madali lang naman, minsan may lumalabas talagang sa Google pag search mo yung company in relation to LGBT, may lalabas na kung may history sila ng anti-LGBT or basically wala silang kahit anong anything about LGBT, then let's not, give our money to them or call them out. Nakita ko yung may isang brand naglabas ng cream. Ewan ko kung lumabas yan sa Facebook ng ilan sa inyo. Lumabas sa akin yung ad nila, no? May pa-cream sila na LGBT ganyan. And I checked the comment section, kino-call out ng ibang mga kapatid nating LGBT yung company and asking, do you have any policy? Do you have any benefits for LGBT? Ganyan. So, let's call them out. Let's not put our money to them and yan, call them out.
Thank you po. And maybe with that, calling them out, they can change their ways, hopefully, and people from within their company will be able to realize what's happening. They need to change something about it, do something about it rather. How about Nicky? Ano masabi natin dito sa naging commercialization of Pride?
Sa amin, it's a balancing act for us because definitely when it comes to Pride, at the moment, hindi namin siya kaya na wala siyang parang corporate sponsorship. But we do listen to feedback from the community. Kasi syempre, kahit kami, ayaw namin na the Pride becomes, brand name and then Pride. Ganon. It still needs to be a Pride that is driven by and defined by the community, the LGBTQIA+ community. So, para sa amin sa Metro Manila Pride, we put safeguards in place when we do take in corporate sponsorships. Tulad ng sinabi ni Reverend Joseph, and I really appreciate nung binanggit niya to na he sticks to his principles when it comes to engaging with companies that gets him. Kailangan at least may willingness. Kung wala silang anti-discrimination policy specific for SOGSC in their workplace, which is not the case for many companies, lalo na yung mga hindi multinational companies, then at least may willingness na to open that conversation. Kasi nga, ano ba naman yung magpapatok ka to, like Reverend Joseph said, uplift your members of LGBT within your company. Pero materially, walang mangyayari. Pagkatapos mag-talk, anong mangyayari? There's no material change within the company to actually uplift their lives in terms of, making sure they're protected from these instances of discrimination and violence. Kasi may kakayahan, kahit walang hate crime law, may kakayahan sila to create these policies para maprotektahan against violence yung mga empleyado nila. Tapos, so yun yung isa. Tapos pangalawa, acknowledging that LGBTQIA plus people are part of other marginalized sectors. Tinitignan din namin kung meron silang mga existing issues with their workers. Kung may mga active, mga labor issues, ganyan, or harassment na matindi. Kung may pag-boycott yung mga sarili nilang mga workers dun sa kumpanya. We try to engage the company and ask them about it first, and to see kung may openness sila in having these discussions regarding it. Kasi syempre, katulad ng nabanggit earlier, sobrang importante that we come into this movement na kapit-bisig tayo sa mga ibang marginalized sectors, because LGBTQIA plus people are also workers, they're also mangingisda, they're also magsasaka, etc. At sila yung talagang marginalized of the marginalized at this point. So when we do partner, not just with corporations, but with other organizations as well, tinitignan talaga namin to, na it serves the LGBTQIA plus community and the other parang communities that they belong to. Yun. At yung in terms of yung pagpapalit ng profile picture from rainbow ng June 30 pagdating ng July 1 ng midnight na yung automatic change. It's not just for companies, also happens to individuals as well. Carry lang sa akin yun, napapalitan nila yung profile picture nila for as long as within the company, nagkakaroon sila ng systemic change that truly does uplift not just their employees, but also their consumer base, also sana pati their partners, kasi kailangan din natin matignan na who do you get your supplies from? What does your supply chain look like? Do you partner with openly anti-LGBTQIA plus corporations or other supplies also? Tigilan natin yun dun, di ba? So, ang daming ways for them to be able to materially change or improve the lives of their own employees. And yun sana dapat din yung tinitignan natin. At ginagawa nila.
Thank you so much for that, Nicky. Hans?
Tag dito. Ang ganda pakinggan, no, nung we can kind of parang not use their products or parang ban them sa natin, sa mga engagements natin. Pero kasi we're living in a very capitalistic society, di ba? Parang hirap kasing i-practice, di ba? Kaya I think we can bank on doon na lang sa pinag-uusapan natin, the role of social media. We can outmaneuver them sa SOCMED, 'di ba? May mga clamor sa SOCMED na nagkakaroon talaga ng change doon sa internal processes ng mga kumpanyang to. And nakita natin na may parang nagpo-pull out sila ng anti-LGBTQ plus na mga materials online. So, yung mga ganun, siguro we can start there kasi yung tokenism talaga, it's really widespread na parang for them, Pride Month is a trend. 'Di ba? In Western societies in particular, being LGBTQ plus sinasabi is a trend. So parang that's not true. Nag-exist na tayo since time immemorial, 'di ba? So yun yung kailangan nating intindihin na we cannot escape from that system, but we can outmaneuver them through the system that they created, which is social media. I think yung second point na pwede kong ma-share is nakakapagod mag-engage. Totoo 'yon. Kahit paulit-ulit nating gawin 'yon sa isang kumpanya, mag-GST tayo, especially in my organization, we do numerous gender specific training sa mga kumpanyang ito. Pero until now, poor pa rin yung policy nila when it comes to LGBTQ+ rights. And hindi natin, kasi yun nga, again, it's generational Hindi pwedeng sa isang training, sa pangalawang training, sa pangatlong training, meron na agad na change. So, doon tayo humahawak ng lakas. Kahit mapagod tayo ngayon, baka tomorrow, or baka during that time of training, merong isang tao na siya yung mag-advocate inside the company or inside their organization, mag-push ng mga policy changes for the LGBTQ plus individuals.
For that. Thank you for that, Hans. Okay, my last question for all of you for tonight. How can we as individuals, especially yung mga manonood din natin ngayon, how can we be better allies for the LGBTQIA plus community? Medyo mabigat siyang katanungan kasi ang dami nating dapat gawin. How do we enjoin people? And how can we enjoin them to be advocates and hindi lang passive sa mga issues ng LGBTQIA community, kundi maging advocate din sila at katuwang natin sa pagsulong ng mga pinaglalaban natin. I'll start with Reverend Joseph.
Oo, maraming paraan, maraming konteksto with that. Marami kailangan i-consider, but I'll start with the family, with the parents, with family members. Kahit hindi mo naiintindihan ang SOGI, SC. I'm talking to parents, kung may parents na nanonood ngayon o makakapanood nito, makakaparinig nito. You should be the first one to advocate or to support, to be an ally of your child. At kahit hindi mo nauunawaan, ano yan, kahit na iba yung mundong ginalawan mo o na ituro sa iyo, kahit iba ang sinasabi ng simbahan mo, it is never a good thing it's never loving to reject your own child, to be the enemy or the opponent of your own child. So kahit hindi mo siya nauunawaan, sabi may term nga, err on the side of love. No, accept, kahit feeling mo mali kahit bilang parent feeling mo mali na suportahan yung pagiging LGBT ng anak mo, err on the side of love. No, love your child, advocate for your child, support your child, and then part of that support, part of that love, educate yourself, make active efforts to educate yourself as a parent, as a sibling, kung kapatid ka, as an uncle, auntie, ganyan, no? Lolo, lola. Educate yourself on ano ba tong LGBT? Ano ba tong SOGI-SC? Bakit ba kailangan ng suporta, ng karapatan, ng batas ng mga LGBT? So, it starts there. It starts within the family, within the immediate network of an LGBT person. And it's yun. I think the best allies would be those who know us, those who love us. No? Mothers, fathers, love your child. Love your brother or sister or sibling.
Maraming salamat po doon, Reverend Joseph. Napaka, ang ganda pakinggan, ang bigat, pero kung ito masisimulan sa tahanan, I think it would be a better place for a lot of people if we err on the side of love. Nicky?
Super agree with Reverend Joseph. Lalo na since in many studies done by other organizations in the community, violence and discrimination against LGBTQI plus people start and are most violent in the home. Dito talaga siya nagsisimula. Lalo na since di mo naman din siya talaga marireport. Kanina magsusumbong yung bata, di ba? Sa magulang siya dapat magsusumbong. So, teacher siya magsusumbong, babalik lang din sa magulang. So, nag-uumpisa talaga dito sa pamilya sana yung pagbabago na that can save the lives of their own children. I think for allies in general, importante yung pakikinig sa people within the community who have these lived experiences. Because a lot of times allies, whether with good intentions or not, a lot of them speak over LGBTQI plus people just because they read something that might be very informative, which again, may come with good intentions. Kaya lang, I think when it comes to marginalized communities and you don't that you don't belong to, importante na makinig tayo. Like, learn to step back and give space to these communities, these sectors that don't normally have this space or aren't allowed to have these spaces to speak and talk about their lived experiences and the issues that their community experiences. Tapos, I think for within the community and also outside, actually, sobrang importante that we unlearn our oppressive roles and beliefs. Kasi lahat tayo, we have learned this through centuries of indoctrination by so many, lahat ng mananakop that came to our country and changed our cultures and traditions to the ways that it is now. Changed our concepts of what gender is, and changed it in a violent way, especially for those who don't adhere to these gender norms. So, importante na ma-unlearn natin to, yung mga oppressive roles and beliefs natin, and at the same time, learn new ways of valuing, respecting, and loving each other. Kasi sobrang importante niya. Kahit tayo within the community, nangyayari din siya. Yung may yung approaching each other with such oppressive and harmful ways, instead of working together truly to march towards our common goal of, yun nga, mapagpalayang buhay para sa ating lahat. So, importante na mabago natin siya, I think, for us to really be able to be better allies to ourselves and to our fellow LGBTQIA+ persons.
Thank you so much, Nicky. Hans?
Ang hirap naman i-end nun kasi ako yung last. Sige, susugan ko na lang uli. First, for the allies, I suggest we start recognizing that we are all systematically oppressed and marginalized. Hindi kayo excluded sa challenges at hindrances na nararanasan ng mga LGBTQ+ individuals. Kasi hindi ka naman part ng 0.001% na nagko-control ng society. So, sa gender and development, yun yung tinatawag natin na awareness na this is not a fight between the cisgender heterosexual versus the LGBTQ+ community. Hindi po. Hindi ito, yung karapatang pantao ay hindi pizza. Na kapag nadagdagan or na-recognize ang karapatan ng mga miyembro ng LGBTQ+ community, ay mababawasan ang karapatan ng cisgender heterosexual people. Hindi po ito pizza, hindi po ito pie. So kailangan natin i-recognize na parte kayo ng fight, parte kayo ng movement, parte kayo ng advokasiyang ito. Kasi hindi natin ito matatamasa at hindi natin ma-achieve yung gender equality kung wala yung mga allies natin. Kaya nga sa ibang acronym, dalawa yung A dyan before yung plus. Kasi yung isang plus nga dyan, allies. Kasi ini-include natin dapat sila. At yung mga allies, included kayo sa fight natin. Kasi ang fight naman ng LGBTQ+ community when it comes to gender stereotyping, gender roles, kasama sila eh. Kapag na-succeed natin to, well, very utopian. Kapag na-dismantle natin yung heteronormative institution structures, patriarchal na lipunan, Eurocentric, imperialist na perspectives, magigain din yung mga kasama natin na cisgender heterosexual people. So we need to acknowledge that, mga allies. And i-end ko na lang din kasi nabanggit naman natin all throughout yung intersectionality na may different tayong social identities. Meron tayong multiple subject positions na dala-dala every day. And as part of Mindanao Pride as well, totoo 'yon na yung mga karanasan na mga wala sa urban areas ay hindi na bibigyang pansin. So sana tayo as members of the LGBTQ community or people who identify as one who belong in this community ay mabigyan nating pansin yung different na struggles din na mga kasama natin sa rural areas. Mabigyan natin ng pansin yung mga nabanggit nga ng mga identity na anak ng farmer, anak ng fisherfolk, miyembro ng IP community. Kasi hindi lamang pag sinabi nating LGBTQ community or gay community na very common din na sinasabi, monolithic nga siya. Hindi po. May iba't iba po kaming struggles na kailangan na bibigyan din po natin ng pansin. Especially ng mga allies. Kasi sila yung policy makers lagi. Sila yung decision makers sa lipunan eh. And na nakakalungkot isipin kasi hindi nga konti, parang invisible yung representation ng mga people who identify as members of the LGBT community na maging parte ng spasyo pang-political. Maraming salamat.
Salamat, Hans. Maraming salamat, Nicky, Hans, and Reverend Joseph for giving your time to us. But before we go, any last words, call to action, and any campaigns that you want to promote? This time, ako naman, Hans. And maybe you want to promote your organization as well.
Yes,
Hans?
please follow us, my organization, Spark Philippines, on Facebook, Instagram and Twitter, and Mindanao Pride on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And we just launched our Kultura sa Gugma, Culture of Love 2.0. I think tonight I think we just posted, or we're about to post our Kultura sa Gugma video. So hopefully you can support that campaign because we believe that Pride Month doesn't end in June. It's a Pride year, okay? So hopefully you can support us even after this month. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Hans. Reverend Joseph?
Just search us sa lahat ng social media platforms, no, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. Recently, meron kami TikTok, Twitter. If you want to know more about progressive or liberal Christianity, also if you have questions in terms of talaga bang against ang Bible sa LGBT? Talaga bang totoo ba yung interpretation nila? So you can check some of our YouTube content, no? Just search for Open Table MCC, no, sa mga platforms. Huling message ko, again, as someone from the religious sector, a gay Christian, my message has always been, God loves you. Mahal ka ng Diyos. Nilikha ka ng Diyos, the wonderful and fabulous queer person that you are. Kasama ang sexuality mo, kasama ang gender identity mo. You are created in the image and likeness of God. Walang tapon. And just hold on to that. God loves you unconditionally. God's love is not based on your sexual orientation or gender identity. God loves you, period. So, and may you love the same way that God loves you.
Thank you so much, Reverend Joseph. Nicky?
Ang ganda nun, Rev. Kinilabutan ako. Sobrang nice siya. Thank you for saying that. I'm sure that's so important for a lot of queer and trans people. You can follow Metro Manila Pride across social media. I think we're almost everywhere, but I don't know if you're on YouTube. Parang mas well spread out pa yung MPC sa amin. We're on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok at mmpride.org. You can find us on our website, mmpride.org as well. My other organizations are Rainbow Rights Philippines and ASEAN Sojigokos. You can search for them across social media as well. I also urge everybody to follow Lagablab LGBT Network, especially if you want to be informed on what's going on regarding the Soji-specific anti-discrimination bill. Tapos in terms of message, lagi namin din sinasabi to sa Metro Manila Pride, and I'm sure this is a feeling that a lot of other organizations have as well, na when we march at Pride, we march for those who came before us and paved the way to where we are now. We march for those who we stand with currently. We march for those who have been taken from us by this violent society. And we march for those who will come after us. And wherever you are in your journey as an LGBTQIA+ person, whether or not you're able to march openly with us or not, we're here for you, and we will keep building a world where you're able to live and love freely and without fear. hanggang ready ka na, nandito lang kami.
Maraming salamat, Nicky. And once
Ay,
again,
thank you, Nicky, ha? Thank
Thank
you
you.
sa Metro Manila
Yes,
Pride for,
congratulations.
congratulations.
Hindi sa amin yun. That is
Saka
an
sa
event for the
volunteers.
community. Yeah, that's
For,
the event
for a
by
very
and for the
successful
community.
event.
It's not just Metro Manila Pride. So maraming salamat sa inyo.
Thank you so much. Oo, unfortunately ako nakasama. I was in a rural area naman na nag-soji din kami actually with the women farmers naman. So yon. So we were one with you during the event naman. Thank you again to all of you who mounted that event and all of the volunteers. And of course, Nicky, Hans, and Reverend Joseph, thank you so much for being here and sharing your insights and yung patuloy na paglaban nyo para sa karapatan ng ating mga kapatid na LGBTQIA community. Maraming salamat. Padayon at ipagpatuloy nyo po ang laban. Maraming salamat.
Maraming salamat po.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you po.
Have a
Thank
great
you.
rest of the night. Thank you so much.
You
Thank you.
Happy Pride Year.
Happy Pride. Yes, Happy Pride. Yes, Happy Pride. Opo. Thank you so much. And thank you. All right. Once again, we had with us Reverend Joseph San Jose, Hans Madangit, and Nicky Castillo. We always see this in social media. Pride is a protest, but some people wonder why is it a protest? It is a protest because there are so many people in the LGBTQIA community have been discriminated against, and they have been fighting for their rights, and people have died, and people have been suffering. And not until they are given that right and they are institutionally recognized, not just with the government, but millions of people, not just Filipino people, then they will achieve what is rightfully theirs, their right to love, their right to be married to anyone with people that they love, the right not to be discriminated against when they apply for jobs, the right for them to be protected by the law, for them not to be killed. Dahil we all believe, like what Nicky mentioned, no, and Reverend Joseph mentioned, we always need to err in the side of love, and we need to focus on that, because when we love, we forward justice, and justice is love in action. Kailangan nating lumaban, ipagpatuloy, hindi lang tayo maging passive na nanunood sa nangyayari sa ating mga kapatid na LGBTQIA. Nagsisimula ito sa pag-obserba sa nangyayari sa kanila. And hopefully, we are enjoined at nakikita natin how can we fight for them, how can we act and advocate and actively advocate for them. Mananatili na ang pride ay protesta hanggat hindi natin nakakamit ang karapatan that they are rightfully theirs. Dahil ang pag-ibig ay malaya at mapagpalaya. Muli, maraming salamat ulit sa ating mga guests, Reverend Joseph San Jose, Hans Madangit, and Nicky Castillo. And now, here are some opportunities and actions that you may do for #RealImpact. All right, UP Babaylan is holding an online Art for a Cause initiative throughout the month of June. A team of queer artists can create stylized cartoon and realistic portraits for you in exchange for your donation for the benefit of Golden Gaze and Pioneer FTM. You may go to this URL on your screen, flash on your screen, or visit UP Babaylan's Instagram and Facebook pages. All right. In solidarity, UP Babaylan is also inviting you to write the #Pride letters, which may be addressed to all queer people, queer youth, closeted queers, trans people, and other group within the community, and even their family and friends. You can send an open letter through the link. That's bit.ly/PrideLetters2022. Next up, on Wednesday, the UP School of Statistics will hold a webinar with the title Notes from the Rainbow Field, a panel discussion on lessons and experiences in conducting LGBTQ+ research. That's on June 29th from 4 to 6 p.m. via Zoom and Facebook live stream. You may register at bit.ly/Pride2022 webinar. All right, that is it for tonight's episode. Thank you so much for joining us. And please share our live stream so more people can watch our chat. You may use our hashtags, hashtag ChatUp and hashtag Real Talk, Real Impact. And also subscribe to our YouTube channel, that's Quarantalk Media, and follow us on Facebook for more updates and programs. That's at Quarantalk Media. And also we are on Twitter, it's at Quarantalk Media. I am Jermaine Halandoni de Runia. Connect with me online on Facebook. On Twitter, that's Jermaine J. De Runa. On Instagram, it's at Jermaine Halandoni de Runa. And on Facebook, it's Jermaine Halandoni de Runa. Join us again next month for another Real Talk here on hashtag ChatUp. Real Talk, Real Impact. Have a great week, everyone.